In U.S. history, we talked about the idea of what caused the American Revolution. What if the idea of the American Revolution started at sea? We're used to thinking that big ideas are dreamed up on land by philosophers and writers anchored to their desks. What if that assumption was turned upside down, showing that many of the ideas that shaped the modern world were in fact born on the ocean waves, among sailors, pirates, and slaves? Maybe Jack Sparrow got it all wrong, and why Harito Nelson can be regarded as a maritime criminal, and how a motley crew in Boston inspired Samuel Adams to coin one of the defining phrases of the Declaration of Independence. This fall semester, Mr. Squires talked about looking through lenses in our U.S. history class and how looking through different viewpoints can change our interpretation. We have concentrated in history on the glories of great national heroes and how neglected the people whose labor made them possible. If we want to understand how the world was connected and how the continents became part of the planet in an interactive way, we must understand the ships and sailors who made those links. Concentrating on the main men can only get us so far. We need to understand the ordinary people who made history at sea. Hugely important modern ideas about race and class were born at sea, but we tend to think that history happens on land and regard the sea as a historical void. This blinds us to important aspects of the world historical process. Large northern European seagoing vessels, which emerged in the 16th and 17th century history, become by the 18th century the most important technology in the world. They can be seen as a precursor of the factory in the sense that they required large number of wage workers to come together and operate machinery to make the vessels go. That's a work process that creates value, tremendous value, for the world economy. But when workers are organized to sail these ships for merchants or kings and queens, the more important people, the organized corporation also leads them to imagine new projects of their own. They start to think about their own lives and corporate for ends other than the ones they were brought together to serve. One of the best examples of this is the origins of the term to strike. We've all heard it, right? Most people don't know that strike originates at sea in the port of London in 1768 amidst a wage cut. So sailors went from ship to ship and took down the sails, which is called to strike the sails in sailing terms. One of the origins of the American Revolution lies among sailors and their resistance to imprisonment. The British Royal Navy was chronically undermanned, wages were poor, so the Navy resorted to imprisonment in order to find labor. Sailors, especially in North America and the West Indies, began fairly early in the 18th century to fight back against this practice. And by the 1760s, the battle between sailors in ports like Boston, New York, or Philadelphia and the Royal Navy had reached a kind of fever pitch. They say they're fighting against tyranny, because ship captains were also often tyrants in the name of their liberty. That's a literal definition of liberty, because when sailors were on shore, they were also known as on liberty. Sailors essentially take direct action because of this. They form mobs. They try to capture men back from the press gang, or seize the ship's boat, carry it to a public place, and set it on fire to dramatize their resistance. So this is all a build-up to the colonists revolting against Britain. So sailors are providing an example of the way in which American colonists should all fight back on behalf of their liberty against tyranny. These sailors' rights then influence important figures like Sam Adams in Boston, who watches a motley crew battling the press gang and articulates an idea in which will become the basis of the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal. The traditional story is that pirates are brutes and criminals driven solely by greed. These things have an element of truth, as all stereotypes do, but what I found is that most pirates were just common sailors, many of whom had been brutalized in merchant and naval ships of the day. So they started capturing vessels and setting up their own ships so that they could live a better life, even for a short while, because a pirate couldn't be expected to live very long. But when the mutineers took over a ship, the first thing they did was elect their own captain. They practiced democracy this way. They also divided up the loot in an egalitarian way. Pirates even created a kind of social security system to provide for their fellow pirates who were injured in battles. I emphasize that they were trapped in an extremely violent system and that their own violence as pirates was a response to that. I think a similar approach would help us to understand piracy in Somalia. Piracy dates back to ancient Greece. Anytime vessels with lucrative cargo passed through areas of poor people who had vessels, they frequently attacked the larger ships and tried to capture them. What strikes me important about Somalia is that many of the pirates come from destroyed fishing communities. European and Japanese fishing fleets has overfished the waters around Somalia and destroyed the livelihoods of fishermen. So they turned to piracy in response. In that sense, I think there are some similarities between the old piracy and the new. These are the responses of poor people who don't have a lot of money. In that sense, I think there are a lot of similarities between the old piracy and the new. These are the responses of poor people who don't have a lot of other choices. There are political and economic issues, and global equality is certainly one of them.